John 10:27. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me.
In 2009, a handful of families disrupted their lives for the sake of Jesus. They willingly left what was known and they leapt into the unknown to plant a new church. Together, we took this bold step of faith. And we started meeting in a living room, just dreaming about what the Lord might want to do in Midlothian and the South Dallas area. We began to dream about what a church could and should be. Knowing that most church plants don't make it, we just begged the Lord for miracles. And I remember a moment early on, we were sitting in that living room when I looked at the precious families that made up our core teams and said to them, guys, we are planning on going public in like 6 weeks, but before we can do that, we need like $60,000 worth of stuff. What will you pray and ask the Lord for your part of that? In Stonegate, those families took that step of faith. They met that moment. Without those families, without that moment of faith, there would be no Stonegate Church. Then we began asking the Lord to send us what we called the Disconnected 150. For the first 150 disconnected people disconnected from Jesus, disconnected from His church. And then we took another step of faith and we moved out of the living room and into the Midlothian Conference Center. And as the Lord has done over and over again in the life of our church, He met us right there. Right at that point of faith, I'll never forget that first Sunday, August the 23rd, 2009. In answer to our prayers, 165 men and women gathered with us to worship the risen Jesus. And one of our biggest moments of faith happened in 2016. We were still meeting in the conference center, but it was time to put down roots by building a permanent place for us to meet. So we launched All In, a 2-year generosity initiative, and the people of Stonegate gave so generously. Our collective generosity allowed us to move out of the conference center and into our building, this incredible base for mission that we now meet in. It was yet another bold step of faith.
The story begins in and around the All In campaign that Stonegate had a few years ago that, for the purpose of building the building that we're sitting in right now. The thing that we're missing out on at the time was the joy that comes from giving generously, and the joy that comes from having your heart not be as fixated on or enslaved by money and finances.
The Lord asked us to trust Him with all of those things, with our finances, our time and energy, even with our family and what that would look like. We would have to say no to certain things. We said no to buying a bigger house 3 or 4 times throughout the process of all of this and learning and growing. And then, the time came that the Lord provided the house that we needed. And even through that, He provided a way for us to give generously in the way that we sold the house that we were moving out of.
Coming out of the All In campaign, one of the things that we realized or have recognized now, on top of this being fundamentally a story of trust in God, is His providing for us. So in every moment of stretching and generosity and moments where God was asking us to trust Him, He in turn delivered and provided for us.
In Stonegate, these stories and many more like them are embedded into the history of our church family. In a lot of ways, they define our history as a church. Each of these steps of faith, they've been we steps, not just me steps. It's been a group of people trusting Jesus and jumping toward him. And if there's one lesson that we've learned, it's this. In every step of faith, the Lord has proven his faithfulness. We've learned that when we leap toward Jesus in faith, he leaps toward us with grace. But Stonegate, moments of faith aren't just in our past, they're also in our present. Jesus has brought us to yet another defining moment. Jesus is asking us to follow him into another big, bold step of faith. Follow Me is a 2-year generosity initiative. It's a 2-year journey with Jesus, a journey of learning what it means to walk by faith, a journey of learning what it means to open our lives and our hearts to the Lord, a journey of learning what it looks like to listen to and follow Jesus. It's a 2-year season that's going to change us as a church family, and if you're open to Jesus, it's going to change you as well. Over the next 2 years of the Follow Me initiative, we're asking Jesus for $15 million. And that will allow us to accomplish 3 really important things. First, it's going to enable us to make deep disciples. Stonegate, our mission is clearly defined by Jesus. We have been called to make disciples. This is our North Star. This is what we do. And over the next 2 years, we'll continue to do that hard work of disciple making in our weekly worship gatherings, in our kids ministry, in our groups and care classes, in our student ministry, in our theological institute, and various other ministries around Stonegate. In Stonegate, I love that word deep, because the bigger a church gets, the deeper it must get. In Stonegate, we are 100% committed to the work of making deep disciples.
We were living a very comfortable life. We had all the things that the world told us were important. The 401k, the cars, the house set up, kids involved in every activity, and really wanted for naught. And in that, a lot of focus on comfort and convenience in our lives. Part of that came with sacrifice, with being in a role, being a very deep corporate role, very demanding, being on the road, missing out on the kids' games and missing out on really the family and the relationships that come from being with the family and being known. Frankly, out of nowhere, felt the pulling and heard the pulling that in that job that had become something much bigger than what it should have been over 15 years, heard that you need to quit. And roughly 3 weeks later, ended up quitting. And really I can only imagine to be like a Matthew leaving the tax booth moment of Christ calling Matthew to follow him, is really where our family ended up being. And from that moment, really as a function of Stonegate, we've been able to walk into a life in which we have significantly more margin. And what we have seen is that over time, we have certainly lost what the world has said with income and ability to do all things and go to the sports games and go on every vacation and every trip, to where now we have margin for our family, we have margin for our friends, for our home group, for Stonegate, for service opportunities. And where we have lost out what the world would say, we have gained from a spiritual perspective through Stonegate, something that is worth more than everything that we've ever given up.
Second, it'll allow us to make more disciples. Stonegate, when you look around our church family right now, you can clearly see we are out of space. So that leaves us 2 options. Option 1, we can hang up a sign and just let people know we're full, and we can send people away. Or we can make more room for more people to hear about Jesus. And when those are your only 2 options, is there really a choice? We are, Stonegate, a make more room type people. So Follow Me will allow us to make more room by expanding our auditorium so that more people can hear about Jesus. And it's going to allow us to enclose the patio so we'll have a space to connect with new people on Sunday mornings. Because Stonegate, if we make room for more people, we also need to connect those precious new souls to Jesus and our church family. Third, it will allow us to make young disciples. every church has to own the responsibility of passing down the good news of Jesus to the next generation. And through Follow Me, we'll make a deep investment into the next generation. We'll invest in our kids ministry by expanding their space over into our current office space, making more room to make more young disciples. And we'll also invest into our student ministry by creating a new space for them on the east side of our current building. And Stonegate, think about what happens in these spaces. These are the very spaces where future church planters are born, where future pastors are made, where future missionaries are cultivated, future enjoyers of Jesus. That's what's happening in these spaces, so that long after we've gone to be with the Lord, this next generation, they'll still be here faithfully following the Good Shepherd. Follow Me is a unique initiative. Unlike many traditional campaigns where you give to the ongoing work of ministry and then above and beyond your normal giving to another fund, Follow Me is different. Follow Me is a one fund initiative because we have one mission to make deep disciples, to make more disciples, and to make young disciples. Follow Me is a call for every single person in our church family to get before Jesus with an open heart to discern one number that represents sacrificial, faith-filled generosity over the next 2 years. In Stonegate, I want to be clear, our primary goal is 100% participation. For everyone who calls Stonegate home to commit to extraordinary generosity over the next 2 years. And church, what happens right now in this 2-year season of generosity really does set the stage for the next 10, 20 years of gospel ministry for our church family. So Stonegate, this is our moment. We cannot pass this moment by. Right now is the time for us to learn what it means to follow Jesus in every area of our life.
We were able to come to this location where we're at right now, 23 acres sitting here. And again, God moved dramatically the day we called the owner of this land to see what they wanted for it. He literally said, I just cut the price of that property in half. He said, I don't even understand how you could have called me. You had to have known that. And the conversation was, we did not know that, but that was the Lord going in front of us. We were able to acquire this 23 acres. We've watched other pieces of land around the church become available. We were able to buy those. And now this church is in a spot where it can invest in God's kingdom for many, many, many years to come. I 100% believe God saw this church at this location long before any of us were born. He saw this church at this place long before Midlothian was a city. We are not here by coincidence. We are not here by circumstance. And I know there's many in this church that say, wow, isn't that enough? Haven't we already done enough? And I might just add, if the Lord himself were here and people were coming to him, they were being saved, they were being brought into the kingdom, I don't think any of us would say, that's enough, Lord. And this church at this corner is doing just that. We're seeing many, many people saved. We're in a spot where thousands and thousands of houses are being built. And I believe he has us here for this moment to help these people come into the kingdom.
And church, can you imagine what it would look like if every single one of us followed Jesus in faith by saying yes to radical, sacrificial generosity for the mission of Jesus? Here's what would happen: revival. And church, that's what we're asking for. So church family, think forward to the moment when you're standing before King Jesus. In that moment, no one will regret following Jesus. No one will regret walking by faith. No one will regret extraordinary generosity. So I'm asking you to join us on the journey. Let's become people who listen to and follow the voice of Jesus, our Good Shepherd.